When we look back on games we loved as kids, the lens with which we see them is often rose-tinted, forgetting the things that frustrated us and not having enough comparative context to know whether or not something was actually good or not.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Hell, when we're talking about the PS1, a console that brought gaming into a new era and largely an entirely new player base, that context was even more limited, as people like my dad weren't really playing video games as a hobby before the PS1 because he was a powerlifting, skateboarding, hair metal Chad, and he wasn't going to find the kind of mature edginess that he was looking for on a Nintendo or Sega console. But suddenly, in 1995, the PlayStation was released, and with it, games like Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, Driver, Siphon Filter, Twisted Metal, all kinds of mature experiences came out and were aimed at people who could transfer their love of action movies into a fresh medium. But because it was a video game console, they got to justify this purchase to their spouse by saying something like, "Oh no, honey, it's not just for me, it's for everyone. Here, I'll get a Crash Bandicoot game for the kiddo. He'll love it. It'll change the trajectory of his life forever." And so began my love for PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games, and it's the reason I've created this series on my channel where I review, recollect, and play through my original childhood game collection. But don't worry, we're still going to be doing the normal stuff where I play through survival horror games from the PS1 and PS2 era. We're still going to be doing that. This is something I'm trying to give a shot and see how it works. Let's dig into Road Rash 3D first, a game among the more edgy titles that appealed to my dad, who was also into motorcycles and leather jackets. Road Rash 3D is the 5th Road Rash game overall and the first for the PlayStation 1. Much like many games from the 2D era, it experienced a number of development problems when faced with bringing the franchise into PlayStation's 3D world, some of which were detailed in the Retro Hour podcast with series creator Randy Breen, where he refers to Road Rash 3D as a roadblock for the series. He would go on to assert that he believes the game to have been largely responsible for the stalling of the franchise as a whole, and would leave EA not long after the release of the final Road Rash game, Jailbreak, on which he was the creative director. He also said they had interest in creating other Road Rash games and even began development on some, but none would materialize. Today, Randy Breen works in the blockchain, so maybe it's good he no longer has control of the franchise, you fucking dork.
It's gone. Just gone. My savings, my house. But I have this little green panda bear on a skateboard.
Unknowing of the development issues the game was undergoing, the fans of the franchise were extremely excited for a 3D Road Rash on their new beloved PlayStation 1 consoles, with IGN saying in their review of the game, "If you've been waiting for the newest Road Rash as long as I have, then you're practically so demented and sweaty right now that you'll simply buy the game regardless of what anyone says." God, the 90s were a simpler time. Speaking of a simpler time, there was an article on the game in Next Generation magazine with some quotes from the game's associate producer Hunter Smith, in which he boasts about the game's graphical fidelity, saying each bike and rider at highest resolution has been modeled with 200 to 250 polygons, which was pretty solid for the time. But just to give you a little perspective, that's about 18 million less than the number of polygons in a single cheek of this girl's ass from the GTA 6 trailer, so hey, maybe we're on the right timeline after all. Looking further into this article, it does carry with it a multitude of good old-fashioned EA bullshit, as they also claim you'll be able to have the ability to upgrade parts, own multiple bikes, steal other bikes, and that there's even going to be a PC version with LAN-enabled multiplayer, none of which actually happened. For those of you who haven't played the game, it would be understandable to not see much correlation between the adult, violent themes in a game like Resident Evil and those found in Road Rash, a motorcycle racing game with some light vehicular combat thrown in for good measure. But this game does not get the credit that it deserves. It's much more than just a vehicular combat game with some street racing. We also have a cast of colorful characters, their respective gangs, and of course a collection of bikes to upgrade. Let's start first with talking about the gangs. We've got the Desaades, the cleverly named and incredibly dressed faction named after the Marquis de Sade, the French libertine known for his novels and essays relating to sadomasochism and exploration of coupling pain and pleasure. Fun fact, the Marquis de Sade is also where the word sadism itself derives. And the Desaades live up to this depiction beautifully in their S&M gear, facial tattoos, and motorcycles that resemble a kinda distorted, dystopian version of a cafe racer. They also carry cattle prods because of course they do. The tech guy Techgeists, which in English roughly translates to tech ghosts, occupy the northeastern territory of the map. Regarding the Techgeists, the game manual refers to them as, quote, scraps of Euro trash that sport high-end bikes with world-class handling. They love to ride in traffic, swerving between riders, and they prefer to avoid fights unless the lone dually is the target. They're super riders, but they're not very sturdy. This refers to the bikes they ride, which are in my opinion some of the most balanced and well-rounded bikes in the game. Them being German is such a neat touch, as I've always heard that German vehicles are especially good regarding handles and turns, and this isn't something you'd ever know about the game unless you read the manual.
Made in Germany. You know the Germans always make good stuff.
The dualies are your straight-up, old-school, leather-clad, tobacco-stained, and whiskey-breathed biker dudes. Named after the dually, which is a pickup truck with 4 wheels on the back instead of 2, it's actually a really hilarious name for these guys. Growing up in a small farm town, every single kid wanted a dually truck when he got older, and every one of their dads looked exactly like these dudes. Now, the Cafe Boys, who occupy the Southeast Territory, have one of the more confounding descriptions. The boys don't start many fights. They'd rather race, and they're pure speed freaks, looking pretty on high-speed race bikes is the lollipop's way, which explains why Desads love to crack them. What the fuck is a lollipop, and why do the Desads dislike them? To be sure, the Cafe Boys are all gorgeous Asians, and because it was the 90s and this is a lowbrow racing game, they all do martial arts. I was already under the impression that the representation of the Cafe Boys was in poor taste. But what is a lollipop? I've scoured the definitions in Urban Dictionary, something which I highly recommend not doing, and I still have no idea, so let's just leave it here. Oh, one last thing about this particular gang. You may recognize this actor playing the role of Tony, the leader of the Cafe Boys, as one Jason Tobin, most notable for the lead role in the TV show Warrior, which is really cool. It looks like he's one of the few actors here who actually went on to a solid career in the industry, along with adult film star Fantasia, notable for such films as Big Knockers 18, Dirty Bob's Excellent Adventure, Return of the Ultra Vixens, and Ben Dover Does the Boob Cruise. Oh, but speaking of actors, the game also features
Michiko Nishiwaki,
who, even after doing stunts in Kill Bill 2 and co-starring in Everything Everywhere All at Once, is referred to on her IMDb page as a multi-talented lady. Well, I guess it's still better than Patty's page, you know, the girl who sells us our bikes and gives us advice between races, because her IMDb page looks like this. Her name is Ishtar Uvana, and apparently this is from a movie she was in called Misery Loves Company, so I mean, I'll definitely be watching that. Buying the type of bike that coincides with the gang that rides them will gain their favor, and they may leave you alone or cut you some slack out on the road. After some extensive testing, I can confirm that this is more or less the case. However, the closer you get to first place, the less this really becomes relevant, because it is a race after all, and once you become a threat, the colors of your outfit and the cut of your bike matters less and less. Plus, aside from getting rammed into and kicked about here and there when other racers are nearby, combat's pretty optional in this one, something that differentiates it from the other games, which pushed combat a lot more. But you know what else pushes the combat? The soundtrack. We got Sugar Ray, Kid Rock, Sugar Ray again, Civ, not that Civ, Sugar Ray again, full on the mouth. Okay, so it's really just 3 Sugar Ray songs, 1 Kid Rock track, and a bunch of bands no one's ever heard of. But hey, this was cool Sugar Ray, alright? When Mark McGrath wore leather jackets, this guy with pants did this move, and oh look, a dog! From here, I guess all we really have left to talk about regarding the game is the gameplay of the races itself. It feels about how you would expect, and you go really fast, you ease up on turns, don't get busted or beaten up, and you'll win. Eventually. Road Rash 3D would release on June 10th, 1998 to very mixed reviews, with GameFan giving the game a 75% and Game Informer giving it a 7.75, while others like All Game and Next Generation gave it just 2 out of 5 stars. My personal favorite bad review of the game was from GameRevolution.com, who said, "Kill your mother, throw her in the sewer, take her shoe, eat it for dinner, brah. Punk rock. Gotta love that toe-tapping beat and unintelligible lyrics. For fans of punk rock, Road Rash 3D is here to please. To a more refined music buff, however, the punk music just sounds like loud guitar riffs with someone yelling into a microphone. Unfortunately, that's the best part of the game, which means that there's no good reason to buy this game. Jesus Christ, who hired Granddad to write video game reviews?
It's the devil's music.
This review feels like it was written by the vapid yuppie characters from Christmas Vacation. While the game would boast very solid sales numbers, eventually even earning an ugly as hell greatest hits re-release, the game would mark the beginning of the end of the series, leaving Road Rash to be yet another casualty on the side of the road paved by 3D gaming. And that's it for today, folks. I know this is a bit of a different video from the stuff I usually cover, so I hope you liked it. Let me know what you think. And don't worry, I have a very special video coming up next week on a survival horror classic, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Please like and subscribe. Remember, we've also got a Discord, a Patreon, and I stream most evenings right here on this channel. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, Mr. Nobody. That's it for me. Thank you all so much, and I'll smell you later.